Oh, Lord. Oh, what a story. What a grand story. Just gonna rest my eyes for a second.
Grandpappy? 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 Grandpappy!
What? What?
Do you have some time?
What?
I said, do you have some time?
What?
Do you have...
Hold on. Good grief. It's not the end of the world. Gotta get my earpieces in. Can't hear a word your cog flabbing saying. What?
Do you have some time to talk to me?
Time. Well, there's a thing about that. Let me tell you a story. Well, now we all know that there's a time for everything. But let's take a gander at what that means. My good old friend Koheleth has taught me a pretty good lesson. All things have a time appointed by God. As we all know, everybody has to be born. Well, not everybody has to be born twice. And most everybody dies. Some kind of all of a sudden. While we're on the subject of life cycles, plants are planted and plucked with no choice in the matter, just like everything else. God is in control from the start to the end. There are even times where killing a guy is right. Like when he rips up the only tomato tree in the Tri-County area. But don't forget, there are times for healing too. Then there are times for tearing down. Kind of like Jesus did with the temple. But remember, he also rebuilt the temple, so there's a time for that too. Well, sadly, there's time for crying. But don't forget, there's time for laughing. And there are times to share feelings with people. Like when you mourn with somebody. Or maybe when you dance with somebody. Well, there's a time for throwing stones. Sometimes in the garden and sometimes the people. But there are times to just pick those stones up out of your own garden. But this poor fellow's just getting buried. Sometimes people just need a hug. But they smell too bad. And it seems at times when you need stuff the most, you just can't seem to find it. Kind of like your hearing aid. And some things you want to keep, but some you just want to throw away in the trash. Like some of your friends, I guess. A long time ago, when people would get upset, for some reason, they'd just rip their clothes. I don't really know why, but I'm sure soon after they figured out that wasn't so smart. So, they'd just sew it back together, I guess. And then there are times where you just gotta keep your mouth shut. But there are also times where you gotta speak up, like when nobody can hear you. And there's always time for loving, even if it's too much time. And there's hating too. And both of these on a much grander scale. Hate would turn into war, and love would turn into peace. Well, there's a time for everything, a time for everything, under the sun.
Grandpappy, I was just wondering, is there monsters in my closet?
Yeah. Yeah.
No!
Let me tell you about that one time when we were running about in Jerusalem. Well, there's a time for everything.